The Watchers in the Woods. The night was heavy with mist as four friends, Samantha, Ava, Claire, and Jordan, drove deep into the wilderness for their weekend getaway. They had planned a peaceful retreat in a remote cabin, far from the stresses of their daily lives. The drive had been uneventful until they reached the last stretch, a dirt road winding through an endless forest. It was already past midnight when they arrived, the towering trees casting long, ominous shadows beneath the dim moonlight. The cabin itself was rustic, but well kept, with a fireplace, creaky wooden floors, and a single generator providing power. They unpacked quickly, eager to settle in for the night. The plan was simple: a long weekend of hiking, ghost stories, and drinks by the fire. That first night, the wind howled through the trees, creating an eerie melody. As they sat in the dimly lit living room, Jordan, always the skeptic, scoffed at the idea of the woods being haunted. "These places have stories," Claire said. "People go missing in forests like this all the time." Samantha shivered. "Let's just not talk about it." Despite the unease lingering in the air, exhaustion eventually took over, and they all went to bed. Sometime past 3 a.m., a noise stirred Ava from sleep. It was a faint scratching at the window. Thinking it was a tree branch, she ignored it. But then she heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate. She held her breath, heart hammering. Peeking out from under the covers, she could see the silhouette of a tall figure just beyond the curtain. It wasn't moving, just standing there, watching. Ava squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to sleep. The next morning, she told the others what she had seen. Jordan laughed it off. "Probably a deer or some creep playing pranks," she said. But Claire and Samantha exchanged uneasy glances. That day, they hiked deep into the forest, following a trail marked with faded signs. The deeper they went, the quieter it became. The usual sounds of chirping birds and rustling leaves were absent. It was unnerving. Then, Claire stopped. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. They listened. A faint whispering sound echoed through the trees, too distant to make out the words. They turned back immediately, but the way out seemed wrong. The trail, which had been clear before, now felt unfamiliar, as if the forest had shifted. That night the cabin felt less safe. Samantha locked every window and door while Claire kept the fire roaring. The whispers from the forest had followed them back, faint but insistent. Ava refused to sleep near the window again. Around 2 a.m., Jordan woke up with a gasp. The generator had shut off, plunging the cabin into absolute darkness. She groped for her flashlight and flicked it on. Samantha was standing by the door. "Sam?" Jordan's voice was hoarse. "What are you doing?" Samantha didn't move. Jordan shone the light on her face. Her eyes were wide and unfocused, mouth slightly parted as if listening to something only she could hear. Then she whispered, "They're calling me." Before Jordan could react, Samantha unlocked the door and stepped outside. The others woke to Jordan's screams and bolted out of bed. Samantha was gone. The door hung open, the wind howling through the trees. They grabbed their flashlights and ran outside, screaming her name, but the woods swallowed their voices. The whispering was louder now, surrounding them. Then, Ava's flashlight flickered over something in the distance. Samantha stood between the trees, facing away from them. Claire hesitated. "Sam?" Samantha's head jerked unnaturally to the side. Then she turned. Her face wasn't her own anymore. Sunken, hollow eyes, a twisted, unnatural grin. Her skin stretched too tightly over her bones, and behind her, shadowy figures shifted in the darkness, watching, waiting. The whispers turned into a deafening chorus. "Run!" Ava screamed. They bolted back to the cabin, slamming the door behind them. The whispers never stopped. The shadowy figures circled the cabin, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. By dawn, the noises stopped. They spent the entire next day searching the woods, calling Samantha's name, but there was no sign of her, not even footprints in the damp soil. It was as if she had vanished without a trace. By the second night, exhaustion took over. They stayed together in the living room, the fireplace burning low. But as the hours dragged on, the whispers returned. Then the front door creaked open. A gust of icy wind swept through the room. Samantha stood in the doorway. Her skin was gray, her clothes tattered and damp. Her eyes were empty voids. Her lips moved, but the voice that came out wasn't hers. "Come with me," Claire screamed. Jordan grabbed the fire poker and swung wildly, but Samantha, or whatever wore her body, didn't flinch. She stepped forward, arms outstretched, the whispering voices swelling into an unbearable shriek. Ava reacted first, grabbing a bottle of lighter fluid from the kitchen and tossing it into the fire. The flames roared to life, illuminating the cabin in a blinding glow. Samantha recoiled, her expression twisting into something inhuman. The shadowy figures outside let out an ear-piercing wail and receded into the trees. The door slammed shut on its own. By morning, Samantha was truly gone. The remaining three packed their things, not bothering to clean up, and drove away without looking back. They didn't stop until they reached the nearest town, where they reported everything to the police. The search teams found nothing. No sign of Samantha, no strange figures in the woods. The cabin was just a normal, empty building, but the locals knew better. "You should have never gone into those woods," an old woman at the diner told them. "The Watchers don't let go of what they claim." Jordan, Ava, and Claire never returned. But sometimes, in the dead of night, Ava still heard the whispers, and she swore that sometimes, when she looked out her window, she could see a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the trees, watching, waiting. Years later, Jordan and Claire had tried to move on, but Ava never did. She became obsessed, researching the Watchers. Then one night she told Jordan she was going back. She never returned. Days later, Jordan received a single message, a recording. Ava's voice whispering, "They're here." The file was corrupted after that, just static and faint whispers. Jordan smashed her phone and never spoke of it again, but every night she dreamt of the forest. And in those dreams, Samantha and Ava were still out there, standing among the Watchers. Their eyes were vacant, their whispers soft but insistent, calling her name. Somewhere, deep in the wilderness, beyond the grasp of the living world, the Watchers were still waiting. Their presence seeped into the land, into the very air itself, a force that could never be escaped. And they were never alone. No one ever truly left the Watchers. They only wait,